After the Great Hyperspace War of 5000 BBY, the Sith Empire fell, and the ancient Sith were all but destroyed. As we discussed last week, holdouts of these Sith endured, scattered across the galaxy, but for 1,000 years, the dark side lay dormant, and both the Jedi and the Republic assumed that the Sith threat had been vanquished. But this first defeat of the Sith would not last forever. When we left off in our series on the history of the Sith, the Beast Wars of Onderon and the legacy of Freda Nad had brought the influence of the dark side to a new generation, and, as we'll discuss today, they were only the start of the return of the Sith.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
4,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, Queen Aminoa of Iziz, a descendant and acolyte of the Sith Lord Freda Nad, was overthrown by a coalition of Onderon's Beast Riders and the Jedi Knights. 2 years later, her husband, fellow Darksider King Omin, was also defeated, and with him, the last remnants of the Onderonian Narratists were destroyed. Jedi Master Arca Jeth had the remains of Nad and his descendants moved to a tomb on Duxon, Onderon's demon moon, and the spectre of the Sith was banished from Onderon. But before the defeat of the Narratists, a pair of young aristocrats from the Empress Teta system had met with King Omin and encountered the spirit of Freda Nad, who had given them an ancient Sith amulet and a book of Sith lore. These two cousins, Satal and Alima Keto, escaped the final battle of the Nardatist uprising, and through them, Freda Nad's legacy survived. In the Great Hyperspace War, the warrior queen for whom the Empress Teta system was named was instrumental in the defeat of the Sith Empire. Her descendants ruled over the 7 worlds of the system for the next 1,000 years, growing incredibly wealthy through collaboration with the system's carbonite mining guilds. In 4000 BBY, the system was ruled by the Lord and Lady Keto, the parents of Satal Keto. Satal and his cousin Alima lived lives of luxury and idleness, and in their boredom and privilege, they developed a fascination with the dark side and the Sith. They and their fellow rich youngsters ended up forming a secret society they called the Krath, a dark side cult that worshipped the Sith in secret, named after an evil trickster god from Tetan mythology. But in 3998 BBY, what started as a game among bored rich 20-somethings became deadly serious. With the help of Freda Nad's gifts, Satal and Alima, both of whom were Force sensitive, began learning Sith techniques, and they were rapidly corrupted by the power of the dark side. Alima became highly skilled in Sith sorcery, while Satal began organizing a base of political power for the Krath using the teachings of Freda Nad. Then, in 3997 BBY, the Krath launched a coup. With Alima's powers of illusion and military backing secured by Satal, the young aristocrats overthrew their parents and murdered them by dipping them in molten carbonite. The young Ketos and their friends then seized control of the 7 worlds one by one, withdrawing the Empress Teta system from the Republic. The Krath quickly assembled an army of loyalists, gathering Force sensitives from across the 7 worlds and training them in Sith techniques. These new darkside adepts, most notably including the Krath Death Witches, were backed by the full force of the Tetan military, which was thoroughly corrupted between Satal's influence and Alima's magic. Sith influence turned the Tetan soldiers into fanatical Krath loyalists, willing to die in kamikaze attacks for their new overlords. The Ketos used their fanaticism to conquer 6 of the 7 worlds in a matter of weeks, leaving only Koros Major. A joint Jedi Republic task force led by Ulic Qel-Droma and fellow Jedi Knight Nomi Sunrider attempted to intervene to save Koros Major from the final Krath assault, but they were driven off by swarms of Krath Chaos fighters. Koros Major fell soon after, and the Ketos seized the Iron Citadel in the city of Sinagar as their new stronghold. The rise of the Krath greatly troubled the Jedi, who feared that a resurgence of the dark side was at hand. These fears, of course, were correct, and it wasn't only the Krath who were bringing the dark side back to the galaxy. Around the same time, the young Jedi Knights, Exar Kun, a student of Master Vodo Siosk-Baas of Dantooine, had also developed a fascination with the Sith. Kun was an arrogant but extremely powerful Jedi who sought to understand the dark side so as to be able to defeat it. His master and fellow apprentices warned him against the study of the Sith, fearing that he would be lost to the temptations of the dark side. But Kun refused to listen, and he left Dantooine to seek out the legacy of the Sith. He travelled first to Onderon, posing as a Jedi archaeologist, where Master Arca immediately sensed his true intentions and told him to piss off. But Kun proceeded to Aziz anyway, where he met two Narratists who showed him Frida Nad's tomb on Duxon. Inside the tomb, Kun came face to face with the ghost of Frida Nad himself, who offered to share the secrets of the Sith with the young Jedi. Nad helped Kun find a pair of Sith scrolls hidden in his sarcophagus, which contained star charts leading to Korriban. Eager to learn more about the Sith, Exar Kun travelled to their ancient homeworld, to the Valley of the Dark Lords. The ghost of Frida Nad accompanied him, and while Kun was exploring the tomb of Marka Ragnos, Nad engineered a cave-in, trapping the young Jedi in the tomb and burying him under a pile of boulders, shattering his skeleton. Afraid to die, Kun attempted to call on the light side of the Force to heal him, but the darkness of Korriban prevented him from doing so. At Frida Nad's urging, Kun instead drew on the dark side to heal himself, turning his anger and hatred for Nad into power. When Kun again used the dark side to escape the tomb, the spirits of the ancient Sith told Nad that the young Jedi was ready for the next step. Nad then led Kun to Yavin 4, where he was overcome by the Massassi, who had continued to occupy the Jungle Moon's temples after the death of their master, Naga Sadow. The Massassi attempted to sacrifice Kun to one of Sadow's Sith-spawn creations, but Nad helped Kun defeat the beast by claiming Sadow's Sith amulet, which channeled Kun's anger to form destructive beams of energy. With the beast dead, the Massassi began worshipping Exar Kun, who, with Nad's urging, cast aside the mantle of the Jedi and accepted the legacy of the Sith. Unwilling to share his newfound power, Kun then used Sadow's gauntlet to destroy Frida Nad's spirit, subjecting the Dark Lord to a second death. While Exar Kun conquered the Massassi, the Krath declared war on the Jedi Order in retaliation for the intervention at Koros Major. In response, the Order called a conclave on Deneba, gathering all the Jedi in the galaxy to discuss what to do next. Many Jedi proposed meeting the Krath in battle, but Qel-Droma proposed a different approach. He feared that outright force would fail to completely destroy the teachings of the Sith, and so he proposed the Jedi to send a spy to infiltrate the Krath and destroy them from within. Many of the Jedi at the conclave were horrified by this proposal, but before an alternative plan could be proposed, the assembly came under attack. A ship above Deneba deployed drop pods containing dozens of vicious Krath war droids, which attacked the gathered Jedi with unrestrained ferocity. Due to the surprise nature of the attack, many Jedi were slain, including Master Arca. The Krath droids were quickly defeated, but the death of his master crushed Qel-Droma, who blamed himself for failing to save Arca. In the aftermath of the attack, Qel-Droma decided to go through his plan without the Council's assent. His brother, Kay, and his close friend Nomi Sunrider urged him not to, but Qel-Droma refused to listen and travelled to Sinagar, posing as a fallen Jedi looking to defect to the Krath. The Kitos saw through this pretty quickly, but Alima nonetheless refused to have Qel-Droma killed, hoping to make Ulic's ruse into reality. But Qel-Droma's mission was thrown sideways when Nomi deliberately let herself get captured by the Krath, hoping to convince Ulic to leave Sinagar. Ulic helped her escape Krath's dungeons, but he refused to abandon the mission. However, during Nomi's escape, Ulic was forced to confront Satal Keto, who taunted the young Jedi with the revelation that he had ordered the attack on Deneba. Enraged, Ulic killed Satal in cold blood. The Krath tyrant died laughing, sensing that he had pushed Qel-Droma toward the dark side. Despite his killing of Satal, Alima still let Ulic walk free in the Iron Citadel, and even gave the young Jedi Satal's Sith amulet. Around this time, the two also began a physical relationship, which Alima used to draw Qel-Droma even closer toward the dark side. Nomi and the Jedi Task Force launched an attack on Sinagar a few weeks later, making one last attempt to extract Ulic. But once more, Qel-Droma refused to leave. By that point, he was in the grip of the dark side, and he knew that he could no longer turn back. Meanwhile, Exar Kun had settled in as the undisputed ruler of Yavin 4's Massassi, who built new temples across the jungle moon in his honor. As his new servants built, Kun immersed himself in the lore kept by Naga Sidao, learning just about everything there was to know about the Sith and the dark side. As part of his studies and his explorations of the Massassi temples, he discovered the Corsair, the battleship that Naga Sidao came to Yavin 4 on. He had the ship reactivated and made space-worthy again, as he intended to leave Yavin to tie up loose ends. By this point, Kun was aware of the rise of the Krath, and he saw these fellow disciples of Friedan Nad as a threat to his power. Hoping to eliminate the Kido cousins, he and a small contingent of Massassi travelled to Sinagar, arriving in the middle of the second Jedi attack. Kun used the Jedi attack as cover to infiltrate the Iron Citadel, and when the strike team left the system, he stepped out and confronted Alima Keto and Ulic Qel-Droma. Kun and Qel-Droma drew their lightsabers and fought, but as they battled, a strange thing happened. The Sith amulets that the two men wore began to interact. They had both belonged to Naga Sidao, and they were both part of the same set. As the amulets interfaced with each other, Kun and Qel-Droma shared a sudden vision of the ancient Sith on Korriban, who ordered them to stop fighting. The long-dead Dark Lord Marka Ragnos addressed the two men from 1,000 years in the past, identifying them as beings of Sith prophecy. They were destined to be Sith Lords, Ragnos claimed, and among the greatest to ever hold the title. The spirit of Ragnos branded each of the Dark Jedi on the forehead, giving them unique Sith markings, as the Dark Lords of old had. He anointed Exar Kun as the new Dark Lord of the Sith, stating that, because of him, the Sith would never die, and he proclaimed Ulic Qel-Droma Kun's first and foremost apprentice. Then, the vision faded. As Alima Keto watched, Exar Kun and Ulic Qel-Droma pledged to join forces, and together, they vowed to bring down the galaxy. After 1,000 years, the Dark Lords of the Sith had returned. Under Exar Kun and Ulic Qel-Droma, the Sith would take on a new form, and they would make their presence known in the most devastating war the galaxy had ever seen. But that's a story for another time. Namely, next week, when we tell the story of Kun and Qel-Droma's Great War with the Republic. But what do you think? Are you excited for the next episode of the series? Let us know in the comments section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.